Are you a book lover like me? I have got some other book review videos, so make sure to go check them out. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Tobacco Leaf Legacies. I'm Cheryl. We have another brew and review today. All right, so the book that I have just finished reading that I am going to do the review on is Pat Conroy's Beach Music. He's not an author that I've read anything of before, so this was totally new to me. The story begins. This is a very multi-layered story. I've actually never read one quite like this, the way that he put it together. The story begins after a tragic, life-changing event in Jack's life. Jack is the main character. He and his family are from South Carolina, but he and his daughter are living in Rome. We follow along as Jack returns to his hometown to face many aspects of his past that he'd run away from in the name of survival. This book is more about those past stories than the current ones, and that's kind of what I mean when I say that I haven't really read a book that was set up quite like this before. And it's not just Jack's past stories, it's other characters' past stories as well. So not only are we getting a glimpse into Jack, his past, how the past evolved, how the past affected him, but we are getting that same thing with other characters as well. I'm going to read the synopsis. I was looking up on Amazon. I like to read reviews. I like to look up the books that I'm reviewing, look up the authors, especially ones I'm not familiar with, to get more information. And somebody else in their review had mentioned this little synopsis, and I just thought, oh, well, that's very concise and very perfect. So let me read this. He or she says, basically the story of 6 childhood friends from their teen years to middle age, told in flashbacks. The main historical references are the treatment of European Jews just before and during World War II, and the political upheaval in this country caused by the Vietnam War. Okay, so those two heavy subjects are very, very prevalent in the book. My overall opinion of the story, that's a good question. It's a good story. I'm not going to take away from that. It is a good story. It is written exceptionally well. I'll mention that more in a bit. The story is set up, like I said, in such a way that you're almost reading, and this is a thick book, y'all. Okay, you're reading almost more about the flashbacks than you are about the current storyline, I guess we'll call it. So it was a little, we know me. If you have listened to and watched my other book reviews, I don't mind an occasional flashback, but I need to read the story as it's happening. I like chronological things. Like I said, a flashback is okay. Sometimes when you're trying to reference something, you're trying to make a point, you're trying to show something about the character. But when the majority of the book is flashbacks, sometimes, for me anyway, I don't know if anybody else is like this, but for me, sometimes it gets confusing because it's like, okay, wait, did that happen before or after that? Okay, so, oh, wait, no, he's not talking about it now, he's talking about then. And when I have to stop and try to figure these things out and like piece things together and in my head or try to put things in order, that just gets kind of confusing. So maybe that's just me. Other people probably really enjoy it. I almost feel like I would have liked it better if he would have just started at the beginning. Like, just start at the beginning with the kids, or whenever they met in high school, whatever it was, go through and maybe not tell all of the story, because I mean, I get sometimes you, as an author, you want to hang on to a little bit so that you're keeping your reader in the dark, and then you'll kind of shed some light on different aspects of the story later. But tell the story. Start at the beginning, tell the story, and at least tell enough of it, or tell little snippets of it, so then you have established a timeline. You have established these characters. You have established all this. And then kind of where the book starts after this event that happened in Jack's life. Okay, maybe when you get to that point in the story, then maybe go back and start filling in some of the gaps and sharing more of the details and that kind of thing. So it's my 2 cents. It was a very, very different story. Has anybody read this? If you have, let me know what you think about that. Okay, now let's get into the questions.
What do you think about the cover?
What do I think about the cover? The cover's fine. It's kind of plain. Now, I looked up on Google, and there are some other covers for this that are really pretty. They show more of a beach scene. I mean, the writing on here is so big. You can barely see the little scene right here. So I feel like there are some other covers that are a little prettier. This one's just okay. But at least it does pertain to the story. A lot of the story happens in South Carolina, there by the water and the ocean and all that. And so at least the picture that you can kind of see in here does pertain to the story.
Is the title an accurate representation of the story?
The title is very accurate. And in fact, and like I said, because most of it, happens on the beach, by the water, the ocean and the whole bit. So it is accurate. And I like when titles of books show up in the books. Maybe that's just a funny thing about me. I like that. So, and one of the characters, in fact, it is Jack, the main character. It is his mom that says this quote. She rescues turtles. She lives on the beach, and I don't know if this is actually true in this area. I would have to look it up and see. I'm thinking it probably is. But apparently loggerhead turtles come up and lay their eggs, and then they swim back out into the ocean. And so you've got a lot of baby turtles in that area. And so his mom loved to protect the eggs. She would move them to a different spot. She would shield them as much as she could. She would kind of help them when they got to the water. It's such a perilous thing for those little baby turtles to get back into the ocean. But anyway, so that was part of her deal. And so she says, "These are South Carolina turtles like my boys here," Lucy said, smiling at us. "I think they listen to the waves. I think they just love beach music." And I thought that was a really cool quote. So yeah, very accurate.
How original or unique was the story?
That question is a little tricky to answer, and I kind of alluded to it already, since most of the book is a telling of the past and not what is happening currently. I guess it's unique in the sense of how the characters were put together. The parts, sadly, that talk about the Holocaust and the Vietnam War, that is not unique at all. I think the characters sharing these particular experiences represent many people who lived through those horrible, horrible experiences. And I did not do this. I, of course, over the years have read many accounts and things like that, both from the Holocaust and in the Vietnam War, of actual things that have happened. And I feel like what the author includes in the book as far as the experiences that these people had in these scenarios, I think they are probably scarily accurate.
What did you like best and least?
Well, what I liked best, for me, it was the part where Jack's elderly mom was taking care of the turtles, like I mentioned. She lived on the area of the beach where they would come up and do their nesting. So she would take care of them and spend hours even logging in and counting eggs to make sure that she was truly keeping up with all of it. And there were constant threats of police action against her because, of course, the animals, the eggs, and all of that is protected when they do this. And so when she would move them in the name of protecting them and helping them, of course, it would make the local police very upset because it was, look, you're breaking the law. But she stood up to them and she basically told them, look, I'm doing what's best for the turtles, and I'm going to make sure that they are taken care of and protected, and they are going to get back to the ocean, and I really don't care what you think about that. And I like that attitude. I also liked the way that the author writes is very lyrical, is just very, he sets these scenes and he uses, metaphors and analogies just to such an extreme and in such a way that it fully at 200% paints a picture for you. Let's see. In fact, I have marked, like this is one area where I really liked how he described this. We bought cappuccinos and watched a group of brilliantly clad Saudis enter the building and pass a large contingent from Ghana, swathed in their native finery. It seemed a citizen from every country would pass you by if you only stood in the Rome airport long enough. And this connection to the whole world never failed to thrill me. I could smell the love of travel here and feel that rush of adrenaline in travelers as they glanced up at departure boards and studied the small numbers on their neatly inscribed tickets. An airport was a place where I could actually see time move. People sifted through doors and gates like sand through an hourglass. I thought that was really cool. If you've ever spent a lot of time in airports watching people and feeling that energy and just experiencing that energy, the way that he wrote that was just like, oh yeah, exactly. You kind of feel like you're there seeing it all over again. The least, the sarcasm of Jack and his brothers was a little too much for me in the beginning. He's got a handful of brothers. I guess the author was trying to show basically the dysfunction of the family, especially with an alcoholic father. But for me, it got excessive and made me want to skip over some of the dialogue that I felt really didn't have any purpose to the story. I get when you're trying to show what a family has been through, and especially when you've had an abusive alcoholic father that has affected the family. But like I said, especially in the beginning, it just got to be like so much sarcasm that I was like, wow, Jack's really a jerk. And he really isn't. He really is not a jerk. But like I said, that to me was just a little excessive. And I felt like, okay, you can show this same thing in about half of the dialogue. Some of the comments, like I said, they just didn't serve a purpose. I just really didn't see where they served a purpose, and he could have written half of the dialogue and got the same point across. Like, okay, I get it. They didn't have a perfect family situation growing up, and so, a little sarcasm is fine, but you don't need to go overboard with it.
What feelings did the book evoke?
The book evoked some feelings. Yeah, they did. You just heard me on what I didn't like. That definitely evoked some feelings. I already said Jack and the way his family, mostly his brothers, communicated with each other was very frustrating. Thankfully, that was really more in the first half of the book than the last half of the book. There were a couple character deaths that were sad. The telling of the Holocaust experiences were gut-wrenching, to say the least. And I will admit that they were very difficult to read in their details. You are not reading about something pleasant. There were so many horrific things that are just unimaginable, really, to us in our daily lives. So much of it was happening that when you read it, whether you're reading it in a story, whether you're reading an actual account, I mean, it doesn't matter. When you're reading it, it's hard to read. It's hard to read because you start to see these things happening in your mind and you imagine what these people went through, and it gets me a little upset right now that we could do this to each other. So that was hard. But I think it's important to not skip over that stuff. Now, obviously, if you've got serious triggers and things, I mean, then if you need to, you need to. And that's that. But I do think it's important to face atrocities like that to truly remember what these people went through. And same thing with Vietnam. You know, there was so much bad stuff that was happening there. And when these men came back and everything, and the way that they were treated so badly. So sometimes it's good to read that, to remind us of the things that actually happened and what these people went through. There were also parts, now I kind of focusing on some of the really heavy stuff, but aside from the heavier parts like that, we'll call it, there were also a lot of parts that made me smile. So I would say that this book really kind of takes you on a roller coaster of emotions. You kind of get to experience a little bit of all of them.
What is your favorite quote or part of the book?
One of my favorite quotes, and not really a quote, it's more of a short passage in the story, and mostly to show how Pat writes. As I stepped aboard the taxi I'm probably not saying that right. I inhaled the sea air, a pungent combination of winds from the Adriatic and catastrophic pollution that threatened the very existence of Venice. The varnished mahogany boat began to move along the Grand Canal, and I noted that fever and sewage were still hanging tough in the city. The gondolas we passed moved dreamlike above the water, like black misshapen swans from bouts of whimsy and nightmare. The sun broke out from behind a cloud bank, and I witnessed again the moment when Venice changed for me the nature of light. Light was beautiful everywhere, but only in Venice did it complete itself fully. In the city where the mirror was invented, each palace along the canal preened like snowflakes in their unholdable images of water.
From what other character's point of view would you like to read?
Honestly, we get so many points of views from other characters that I'm not sure we need anymore. I'm not sure the book could handle anymore, honestly. And I'm not complaining about that. I mean, I always like to get other points of view from other characters. And in here, you definitely have a lot of them. So I think there's enough. I don't think we need any more.
What do you think was the author's purpose in writing the book?
The purpose? I had to think about that for a bit. And I feel like his purpose in writing it was healing. It's to heal. The further we go in life, the more broken pieces we have to carry around with us. And those pieces are unbearable for some, and no matter to others, and all varying degrees in between. One of the keys in life is coming to terms in whatever way that you can with what happened to create those pieces. Often, that's enough to help people heal. Sometimes, though, the pieces are shared, but only one person knows their origin. This story shows that sharing the stories, sharing the pain, is a huge step to healing when there are many involved. Many times our hurt and our pain is caused by not knowing what prompted someone's behavior or lack of toward us. So having an explanation, even if it's a messy one, truly heals more than time ever could. And there are so many people in life that, for various reasons, do not want to have, cannot have, in some situations maybe, hard conversations, complicated conversations, messy conversations. But I feel like that we are hurting ourselves, that we are hurting other people, maybe on purpose, maybe not, because we're not willing to either listen in these hard conversations, or we're not willing to start them. We're not willing to sit down and have the difficult, gut-wrenching, kind of conversations that sometimes we really need to have. And having a kind of closure, and when I say closure, I don't mean that you get a happy ending, okay? This is life. This is reality. So happy endings are often for fairy tales, okay? Everybody dies in this life, okay? So there's no happy ending here. That's kind of how I've always looked at it. Everybody dies, okay? That's the end of the story. Everybody dies. So you really have to do what you can while you're here with the people around you, with yourself, whatever, to seek closure, even if it's messy, even if it's hard, even if it's complicated in situations, because there are a lot of things in life that hurt, all varying degrees of things. And I mean, I understand sometimes there are people that, if you had an abusive parent or, there are certain situations that, of course, you're not going to be able to sit down with somebody and have a hard heart and really work through stuff. But there are other situations where it's just a matter of two people just not wanting to talk. Two people just have their own opinion of what happened. And well, I'm not going to talk to this person, and I'm not going to talk to that person. I'm not going to do this and this and that and whatever. And in the meantime, every single year that goes by, this hurt and this pain, and it just grows and festers and just on and on and on. And sometimes we have to revisit. Sometimes we have to revisit, and we have to go over, and we have to talk about these hard things and go through it. And there is a lot of that in here. And I feel like, circling back around, that kind of goes back to why he wrote it. Let's talk about the hard stuff, and let's work through it, and let's try to heal some of the pain and things that have happened over the years. A lot of times, and this is always my thing, knowing the why helps me understand. I mean, how often have you gone through life and something happened, whether it was with a friend, whether it was in a relationship, whether it was at work, whatever it was, something happened and you're just like, wow, I don't understand, I don't understand what is happening. And that not understanding, like, you don't know how to process it. Like, you don't know where to go from there. And that affects you being able to heal, being able to get past something, accept something, whatever it is. Versus when you find out a reason, it doesn't make it okay. If it was something bad, it doesn't make it okay, but it's a reason, and it's an explanation. And a lot of times it's that explanation that will help us heal, because maybe somebody told you something about their lives that you didn't know that had happened. That's kind of the theme in here. Something happened that has affected them, and once you know it, the little light bulb goes off and goes, oh, That's why you said that. That's why you reacted that way. That's why you lashed out. That's why, whatever it was. So that, it all kind of circles back to healing.
Would you read another book from the same author?
I don't know. I'm not sure. As I've already said, it's written exceptionally well. The way that Pat uses the words and sentences and analogies and metaphors, I've already, read a little bit to you. It is amazing and phenomenal. There is a directness and kind of a brutal honesty in how he describes difficult situations. But for me personally, there is a grittiness, we'll call it for lack of a better term, that isn't exactly enjoyable for me. Maybe it was just this book, maybe it was just the way that he wrote this or approached this particular story, this particular character. I don't know. So I guess the answer is maybe, but I'm not going to go out of my way to.
Would you recommend it to others and/or would you read it again?
I won't read it again. I can say that. I will not read it again. It's not a story that I need to go back and read again. And while I'm not going to say that I don't recommend it, because obviously everybody feels towards books differently. One person hates it, one person loves it. So it's a very personal choice. So I'm not going to say I don't recommend it, but I will say this. Between the Vietnam War, between the Holocaust, and the subject of suicide and alcoholism, you do need to tread carefully if these are triggers for you. If you've known people, if you have gone through some of this, if somebody in your family has gone through some of this, it could stir up a lot of things that you may not be prepared to deal with, or you might be prepared to deal with. Maybe something in here would kind of push you a little bit to deal with some of that. I'm not sure, but tread carefully nonetheless, because it hits a lot of hot buttons. I will say that. Also, if you've recently lost your mom, and I know I've said this with another book, it seems to be a theme and I don't know why, but if you've recently lost your mom, that is an issue in here as well, so you might want to hold off for a while. All right, y'all. That is it for this brew and review of Beach Music. I said, have y'all read this? If somebody has read this, y'all might have a completely different opinion about these characters and such that I do. And I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it. I have said in some other videos, and I'll continue to say, I'm not looking for just a one-sided thing here. It gets kind of frustrating to me, and I guess this is why on some other vloggers channels and such that I watch personally, a lot of times I don't comment. I don't comment on anything because I see that the person doing it isn't commenting. And I mean, I understand some of those accounts that have like 1 million followers and hundreds of thousands of comments. I mean, I can understand not being able to sit down and respond to every single one. But I mean, there's not even any likes. Like, even if I didn't respond to your comments, I always click on the little like thing so you can see that, okay, I basically, at least, I saw it. So I like the reciprocal part of this. I always want to read your comments. I want to hear your thoughts, read your thoughts as it is. And I enjoy that kind of back and forth. I enjoy the communication and the conversation as much as we can have it. I enjoy doing these and I enjoy sharing the information with everybody, my opinions, my thoughts, and that kind of stuff. But I also very much enjoy hearing from you and reading your comments, and not just because you comment. It's not just because you're a number. It's because I genuinely want to read what you have to say, what your opinions are about stuff, whether it's about the books, whether it's about the crafts. whether it's about other stuff that I post, I absolutely am genuinely interested in what you're thinking and what you're saying. So feel free to absolutely share them with me. As always, time is precious. Carpe diem, seize the day. I'll see you next time.